Okay, so this one is a bit depressing. It's a subject matter I think is very shocking, but it's something that happens in society, and I've always taken an approach on this channel not to censor things that I think are important to talk about. It's in the eye. The date is the 20th of June, and the report is by Sam Rucker. Acid attacks soar, but only 8% of cases lead to charges. Acid attacks in the UK spiked by 75% last year. Figures reveal despite less than 10% of cases resulting in criminal charges, the number of attacks soared to 1,244 in 2023, according to a Freedom of Information request submitted by Acid Survivors Trust International. The FOI request found that London and Northumbria had the highest proportion of acid attacks, with the crime most affecting areas of higher poverty levels. Despite a 75% rise on 2022's figures, only 8% of cases last year led to a charge or summons. That's appalling. Jav Shah, executive director at ASTI, said the incoming government needs to tackle the root causes of acid attacks. He added, attacks tend to happen in locations where there are issues of deprivation and lack of opportunity. Government needs a long-term strategy to deal with that. The impact of an attack is so wide and devastating, it reaches every aspect of a survivor's life. Physically and psychologically, they will end up with a high degree of scarring. Mr. Shah added, I have witnessed survivors who are now dependent on children of 8 or 9 years old doing their cooking. Despite acid offences being previously associated with gang-related male-on-male violence, ASCII research suggests that 50% of victims in the UK are now female, with 59% of reported threats of an attack coming from women. I remember a few years ago a woman had thrown acid over her boyfriend, so it does happen that way as well. Many survivors of acid attacks live in fear of reprisals for reporting the attack. In 2014, Andreas Christopheros, 38, was left blind in his left eye and permanently scarred after an acid attack at his home in Truro, Cornwall. David Phillips had driven 300 miles to carry out a revenge attack against someone he believed had assaulted a member of his family. In a case of mistaken identity, Phillips knocked on Mr. Christopheros' front door and threw a pint of uric acid in his face. And I read more on this report. Apparently, his wife also got injuries on her foot, and their child was crying upstairs. It was at that moment that my life changed in every single possible way, Mr. Christopheros, who worked in property development, said. I'm regularly having surgery still. My eyes do not shut properly, and I am blind in one eye. The impact is absolutely monumental. Being jailed for life in 2015, Phillips appealed against his sentence and ultimately only spent 5 years behind bars. Mr. Christopheros said proper sentences are the ultimate deterrent and do need to happen. He also wants new legislation which would make decanting acid into non-marked container illegal. The Home Office was contacted for comment. I think his request is very reasonable to have acid in a non-marked container illegal. That just makes sense. That's the report. It'd be a little bit hard to see that, but the guy had horrendous burns. His life has been completely turned upside down, and the thug responsible. Um, I had to double check this. 5 years. What actually happened was the presiding judge had to quash it because it was deemed that Phillips wasn't a threat to the community, and it was a very specific case. So the life sentence was quashed to 16 years, of which he would be eligible for parole in 8. And then Mr. Christopheros learned that he was in an open prison within 5 years of the attack. So it's not exactly free, but an open prison. Um, Ultimately, only spent 5 years behind bars. Well, yeah, we may as well say he was freed. Um, Absolutely disgraceful. It's this specific case is another example of how stupid judges can be. I mean, that's not very diplomatic language, but it's how I feel about it. Just so detached from reality. I mean, I'll see if I could get this report up. I lost it because my other computer's playing up a bit, but um, it's just I think that's one of the most heinous crimes possible. I really do. Let's see. Actually, I do have it here. Just bear with me. Um, I'm not surprised Mr. Christopheros is wanting tougher sentences. I mean, he was totally let down. And just to get to the point about this sentence, because it's an important point. Um, let's see, bear with me a second. Yeah, a Ministry of Justice spokesperson said acid attacks devastate lives, leaving victims with both emotional and physical scars and are thought to remain with Mr. Christopheros. Pretty weak statement. I mean, it's just stating the obvious. Um, let's see, I'm trying to find a quote where, yeah, life sentence quash, here we go. Absolute disgrace, in my opinion. The court heard Phillips wanted to exact revenge for an attack carried out on someone he was close to whilst holidaying in Cornwall. The obsessed father of three spent months planning his vengeance before driving to Truro in December 2014 armed with a bottle of acid. The attack, the court was told, had a horrific case of mistaken identity, and Phillips was acting on totally false information. Um, and just to, at the Court of Appeal, Mr. Justice Wynne Williams, sitting with Lady Justice Rafferty and Judge Peter Collier, QC, noted the remorse expressed by Phillips, but also the devastating impact of his crime. Mr. Justice Wynne Williams added he understood the dreadful nature of the offence. Obviously, you don't, since you gave him a soft sentence. We acknowledge that this crime involved a great deal of planning and a great deal of determination to carry through, but he ruled that Phillips had wrongly been condemned as a highly dangerous man. From I'm sure he's totally safe, from whom the public would need further future protection. He said instead the evidence suggested that the threat he posed was limited to the very particular facts of the offence. We are therefore forced to conclude that this life sentence was not justified and must be quashed. Shame on you, Justice Wynne Williams, you weak minnow of a judge. Um, disgusting. I mean, the thing is, the guy was sent to an open prison after just 6 years, in fact, less than 6 years. That's an insult to his victim. Yes, he's expressed remorse, but this notion that he's somehow safe to the public. This is a man who acted on impulse, didn't get his facts right, carried a very dangerous substance 300 miles with the intent of destroying someone's life. And yeah, he's expressed remorse, but I think personally he should have got a minimum of 10 to 15 years behind bars, guaranteed. It's just another example of how useless our justice system can be. And Mr. Christopheros has been let down by this. He has a life sentence. It's a disgrace. But I find that shocking. I mean, I find it shocking that it happens at all in this country, but just 8% of cases uh, leading to a charge or summons, that's insane. I think a big part of the problem will be often victims won't go forward and they may be involved in criminal enterprises themselves, or you'll have situations where people will be victims of so-called honor crimes and they don't want to go for fear of reprisals. So it may not be entirely the fault of the police here. Um, but when this is prosecuted, I think there needs to be much tougher sentences. Yet another crime that is just the sentencing just isn't proportionate to how serious it is. I think it's one of the most evil crimes possible. Um, mistaken identity or not, remorse or not, I think Phillips should have got at least 12 years behind bars guaranteed. At least. At least. Um, 5 years and he gets to an open prison. That's a disgrace. The very fact that he would appeal it shows that he hasn't got real remorse or he's not really considering his victim. And my heart goes out to Mr. Christopheros. I can't imagine the effect that would have. His wife was also injured, so there's actually two victims. Um, but yeah, definitely there needs to be law changes. Starmer needs to. I think what we need in this country is minimum sentencing. We hear about maximum sentencing. The Court of Appeal is completely and utterly useless. I think we need minimum sentencing that for the most serious crimes, judges are forced to issue a minimum sentence. We hear about maximum sentences. I think judges should have their hands tied and be forced to issue a minimum sentence. And as to the issue of overcrowding in prisons, fill prison spaces. I know it all costs money, but there's no domestic issue that gets me as angry as this because it's just victims of crime are let down time and time again. If I was in a position to do so, I would definitely donate to that charity. It's a bit tight at the moment, but the Acid Survivors Trust International. Um, appalling.